Quick couple introductions. Our Vice Mayor showed up. Vice Mayor Robert Hewitt. Raise your hand, Robert, back there. Give him a hand. And Council Member Nick Smith. Council Member Nick Smith showed up, and he had to work late. Thank you, Nick. He's outside. Thank you very much. Okay, back to the league. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, it's time to get started. Our city council candidates, we have a large group, and we have to have a question answered from each one, so we won't get to as many questions. I was asked to let you know, because they were asked, the broadcasts of the recording of this meeting will be after Friday on channel 24 AM and VOD, Voice of Democracy, on the city's website.
That's a video on demand. I'm sorry. VOD stands for video on demand. It's
Video on demand. Okay, I like Voice of Democracy. Okay, so with no further ado, we are going to have opening statements from the council candidates in the order that they are seated by lot. They got into this order. We'll start with Joe Amelio.
Hi, I'm Joe Amelio. I grew up in New Monterey. I was there all my life. And one of the things I remembered as a child and a youth, my dad and mom brought us always to Lover's Point and jumped in the saltwater pool and really enjoyed our time at this time. Fridays, we used to go to the Grove Theater, the Lighthouse, and really enjoyed that. And I have a wealth of experience. You'll hear my experience. I've always been a public servant. I was a teacher, a principal, a superintendent of a school, and I was a police officer, and I also was a business owner for 6 years. I bought some donut shops, copped some donut shops. I'm from San Jose. I got my bachelor's degree at San Jose State University. I presently work for the Parks and Rec. I presently work for the Defense Language Institute as a test administrator. I have a passion to serve. I would provide a fresh voice and a person of reason to the city council. And I have been that way throughout my life, and I would love to serve the citizens of Pacific Grove.
Thank you, Joe. Dan Miller?
My name's Dan Miller. I remember when the community center here had a little Girl Scout house on it, and I don't know if anybody here tonight remembers that. I live in a house across the street that my grandparents built over 80 years ago. I'm currently with my wife, raising 3 lovely children that go to Robert Downs School here. I previously served on the council for just over 6 years. I was on the planning commission for 3 years. I think one of the things we've lost in town is the institutional knowledge and historic knowledge of the city and why it's like it is. Probably a lot of people don't realize when we start talking about Pine Avenue, why Pine Avenue is so wide. There's got to be a reason, and that's because a trolley used to run down the middle of Pine Avenue. Last time that it was talked about to do something to Pine Avenue, everybody said, what about the butterfly parade? You know, you could put a bunch of medians in, a bunch of raised things, and I'm sure staff was looking at, and where are we going to get the time and the energy to fix this stuff when we can't take care of the other places in town. So you really have to look at what's going to happen down the road. It's funny, the mayors were asked about Project Bella and the grand jury report. When I was on the council, I said we need to get the money in advance from these guys. And I was actually ignored by some of the other people on the council. And as it turned out, that ignoring me cost $100,000. I try to look at things and do studies and look other than just what's supplied by staff, because very often staff is doing something from an entirely different place than I think the residents are. I like to look at myself as a residents advocate. I've shown it for the past 30 years or so that I've been going to council meetings, and would like to represent you still once again, because I think the experience is needed. And there's pamphlets back on the table that I hope you pick up, because boy, I worked hard on this.
Thank you. Andrew?
My name is Andy Kubica. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, my name is Andy Kubica, and I have a degree in aerospace engineering from the University of Notre Dame. I spent 44 years in Sunnyvale building satellites for Lockheed Martin. I'm well qualified for a position on a city council based on my expertise in project management, complex technologies, and budget analysis. I ran for city council 2 years ago, and I was working full-time at the time, so I couldn't campaign as much as I can now. I am fully retired, and I'm willing to go door to door again like I did last year, 2 years ago. I ran for city council then, and I'm running for now because of the budgets, because of our beautiful city, and because I care about our coastline. I currently chair the Traffic Commission and serve on the Pacific Grove Search Team, the emergency response team. I have volunteered at 4th of July and Good Old Days barbecues. I love the beauty of our city. Recently I went down to the lumberyard, and on the way back I drove by the coast. And all I could think of is the beautiful beaches and what we have here and the grace that we have and the paradise that we live in. Yesterday there were several deer on our front lawn. This is what makes me love Pacific Grove. This is what I need to do. I was downtown recently, and I can walk to downtown from where I live. I can come down here and have coffee. I want to maintain the city in a certain way, but we need to move forward. And for that, we need to have a well-balanced budget. And I'm asking for your vote, and thank you very much.
Okay, Stephen?
Good evening. My name is Steve Lilley, and I first want to thank the League of Women Voters and the Chamber of Commerce for hosting this forum this evening. I'm running for City Council because I believe that leadership matters. We need leadership to make sure we continue to operate our city properly, to manage our finances, and to provide the services that you and the audience and your neighbors deserve and expect. My wife and I first came to Pacific Grove as newlyweds in 1975. We started our family here, but we left 4 years later as I pursued career opportunities in healthcare administration. Then in 2010, thinking ahead a little bit about retirement, we decided to return because we felt Pacific Grove was home and we wanted to come back, and we were able to. Since then, we became active in community affairs. Presently, I'm a member of the Planning Commission and also a volunteer guide at the aquarium. In nearly 40 years in the healthcare industry, I worked for many of the largest healthcare organizations in the country and eventually reached the senior management level. I developed knowledge in strategy and planning, finance and governance, and facilities development and regulatory affairs. But probably most importantly of all, in problem solving, just talking to people, framing issues, analyzing options, and making decisions for the good of the whole. And I would submit that that experience would be put to good use if you elected me to the City Council. If elected, I would pursue the following priorities: vigorously monitor our budget, to fund essential city services, to pass a cell tower ordinance, adopt a coastal plan, develop a downtown plan, and to insist on open, transparent government. And so with that, thank you for having me here, and I ask for your consideration and vote on November 6th.
Thank you. Jenny?
Hello, good evening. My name is Jenny McAdams, and I'm running for City Council. I am not retired. I am a renter. I'm also a mother, and I am a passionate advocate for Pacific Grove. I bring a unique perspective to City Council. And with that, I really have a compassion and a reality with regards to what younger families have to go through to sustain here. I absolutely understand those challenges. We have lots of issues. We have traffic, CalPERS, we do not have water. I also think it's a fair statement to say that every one of us in this room is concerned with protecting our environment and also our natural resources. There are other issues, though, that deserve time and focus, and these important discussions and dialogues need to start with our city leadership, and that's with regards to affordable housing, our homeless, resident retention, workforce retention, and making sure that all of the Pacific Grove residents and local businesses feel supported by City Council. I will treat all residents with respect. I am transparent, I'm accessible. If you email me or contact me, I will contact you back. I don't necessarily receive that treatment right now. My votes will always be in the manner of the residents. My unique qualities bring a different voice and add bounce to council. Our city deserves council members who bring integrity, respect, innovation, and a passion for the residents, which I do. And I absolutely, with your vote, will do that.
Yes, Tama. I'm Tama Olver, and I'm running for council for the love of Pacific Grove, not for any particular issue. My husband Jack and I bought a long-term rental property here in 1998 and used one of the units to come down pretty much every weekend until we bought our home here in 2002. We came here for the beautiful environment, for the outdoor healthy lifestyle, and for the world-class opportunities to volunteer. I have background in business, about 40 years in technology companies. I worked as a computer programmer and worked my way up to executive roles. My last job before retiring was Chief Information Officer of Aplera Corporation, a life sciences company. I have not-for-profit board experience. I was on the museum board for 5 years here and on the 2008 civil grand jury. If elected, I would have a lot to learn. I also believe I could bring a fresh perspective. At the same time, I would work hard to learn what I need to learn to apply my background in something very different for me to do. I'd work hard for the financial health of the city facing a few difficult years from the expense point of view. I'd work hard for our quality of life, keeping our hometown character as we make the changes that we need to make. And I'd work hard for the environment, making sure at a minimum we have a solid local coastal program that is enforceable. I would very much enjoy the opportunity to work for you, to listen to you, to look at all sides of the issues, and to do on your behalf the right thing for Pacific Grove.
Good evening, I'm Amy Tomlinson. I'm running for City Council. I'm very excited to be here with all of you this evening. I grew up in Carlsbad, California, and I was lucky enough, even as a Navy brat, to grow up in the same house my whole life and be a part of the community. I then went off to University of Southern California and got a degree there, and then joined the Navy myself. I've lived in many states, in many communities during my 18 years of service. Once I joined the Navy, I became an aviator and flying F-14s and F-18s all over this country off of aircraft carriers. I've served in a big way to serve our country, and now I'm really excited about coming around and establishing ourselves and our family in this community and being able to serve you and serve this community. I've never had that opportunity to stay planted, but we are lucky enough to know that we're going to raise our 2 children, they're ages 5 and 7, here for the rest of their upbringing. My husband has a permanent job here in the Navy at the Naval Postgraduate School, and we built a home. We've invested in the community, and now that my kids are in school full time, I have the time to serve you. So that's a little bit about me. I look forward to answering your questions here tonight, but then also moving beyond that and meeting you out on the streets, coming to your door during this campaign time and getting to know you and answering any questions that you have for me.
Amy, we will start our first question, and Joe will be the first to answer, and we'll go right down the line. Does a city the size of Pacific Grove need a city council with 7 members? If not, what are you prepared to do to change things?
Well, I think I should be the only person elected. Anyway, no, I believe that we should keep the 7 members on the city council. It's been part of the charter for over, since the late 1800s, I believe. And we need to keep the 7 members. I think it brings diversity to decisions. And the way I feel about it is that's exactly how I feel about it. We should keep the same 7 members of the city council.
Yeah, this was just hashed out by the council, and I don't think it's something that needs to be rehashed out like right away. We seem to have done all right as it is with 7. The old why mess was success. You'd save what, $500-600 maybe, and a month, and maybe a little printing cost of those voluminous agendas and packets, but otherwise, out of all the things we could be worried about, that's not one of them.
Andrew?
Yes, I think we need to remain at the 7 number. As was mentioned before, it was hashed out at the city council recently, and we are a very democratic small town, and there are a lot of questions that come in from the populace, and we need the diversity of the council members to answer those questions. And so I think we need to keep the 7.
Steve?
Well, we should stay at 7, so now it's 4 for 4. But it brings diversity to the table, so to speak, at the city council to have 7 members. There's no need to copy other cities that have 5, and that seemed to be one of the reasons to do it. This is Pacific Grove, and we've done quite well with what we have.
This might be our first unanimous decision. I'm for 7 too. That's what our charter says, and council just looked at this issue and decided not to move forward. So I agree to 7.
Oops. Is this on? Cliff, sir. Thank you. Sorry about that. I agree with the other candidates for council.
Yeah, and I also agree. I think the more people that you can get together in a room and have their opinions and views and experience and expertise, sometimes having been there, done that, there's no replacement for that. So being able to have all 7 people's views and listen to that and hash out issues is a great way to go.
We'll start with Dan. Do you have a plan for dealing with the budget shortfall if short-term rentals are banned? And part 2, what is your position on employee pay and benefits?
Boy, no one's ever heard me talk about this. Yeah, well, anybody that looked at the last budget, the cost of employees went up 30% in 1 year. So we have many valuable employees. 2 of my favorites are actually here tonight, not talk about 2 of my other favorites over here. But we got to get control of this. And it's not just employee pay, it's the whole CalPERS situation, which people need to realize a lot of it's out of our control. As far as what we would lose from STIRS, I think one of the first things is bring back the fire department to town, go back to some volunteers, do the same staffing that we now get from Monterey, and we'll save close to $1 million right there. So that makes great inroads. That's about it. At some point in time, you got to say we got to live within our means and quit taxing every election.
Here.
Okay.
The question was if Measure M passes.
Do you have a plan for dealing with the budget shortfall if short-term rentals are banned? And 2, what is your position on employee pay and benefits?
Well, if short-term rentals are banned, that would decrease the income, the revenues to the city of over almost $2 million. Totally banned would be almost $2 million. If Measure M passes, that'll be over close to $1.5 million. From that point of view, there are several other options. We could end up with a parcel tax. We could end up with different kind of taxes that were recommended by our consultants. Or an out-of-the-box look is to maybe get a retail cannabis shop. And I'm just throwing it out there. They ask for an option, I'm giving some options. Employee pay and benefits. We need to work with the other city people in the towns and to keep equitable pay for the employees. The CalPERS is a statewide issue that needs to be worked at the state level. Thank you.
Steve?
Well, to begin with, the city council has a fiduciary responsibility to keep a balanced budget. And should be no give in that. In terms of budget, right now, as I understand it, we have a quarterly budget review at the city council. That's not enough. It needs to be monthly, with monthly various reports from department heads. There's no way to control a budget unless you do it often, and every quarter is just not enough. That's the only way to prevent problems down the line. As far as the employee compensation, we're going to have to work with other cities in the area to figure out just exactly what people are getting paid and look at pay scales. Certainly, we have to hold the line in staffing, and we have to hold pay raises to a reasonable level. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to afford anything, and we'll have to make cuts.
Thank you, Jenny.
So with regards to the short-term rental revenue loss, I've repeatedly asked the city for a profit and loss statement on the short-term rental program, and they're unable to come up with one. So, you know, I mean, before we start quoting numbers, I think we really need to know what those numbers are. With regards to the pay and benefits, you know, council fairly recently, you know, last 3 or 4 months, they gave raises to pretty much across the board, especially with regards to the police department. So being on council, you know, with people's livelihoods, that's a very sensitive topic, but on council, you know, you have to make those hard decisions, because ultimately what it comes down to is the balanced budget and just being mindful with regards to spending.
Thank you, Tama.
So, with regard to loss of revenue, if Measure M passes, I don't have a plan, but we have ideas about what we would need to do. We would need to save some money through cost-cutting measures, no doubt. I believe the middle forecast that the city put together for how much revenue we would lose, not the most optimistic, not the most pessimistic. So we would have to account for that sort of middle forecast of the revenue we would lose. We could defer projects, we could continue to defer maintenance, and we need a revenue source because there's still a gap. So whether it's a cannabis shop or an additional tax to get us through the next few tough years, we need some combination of those actions. And for the staff pay, continuously comparing your salaries to make sure you're in market, I think is a practice that any organization needs to follow, and I think we've done some of that, and as a council member I would make sure we continue.
Amy?
Two tough questions to ask in a minute. I think that if we lose money, if Measure M does not pass, there will be some money lost. I agree that the numbers of all, maybe it's not going to be nearly as doom and gloom as some will say, but the money to replace it, I think that we need to bring jobs to our community. And if we can't fit them into Pacific Grove, then let's work with the neighboring communities. Let's work with the Fort Ord Reuse Committee and bring down some companies, some blue chip companies that can bring high paying jobs to this peninsula, and then the people that work there can live and be vibrant in our community so they can spend more and be a part of Pacific Grove and make up the difference. So we don't have to rely on short-term rentals for that money. And then as far as what we pay people, let's make sure it's competitive, but also let's hold them accountable, make sure that they're doing the work that they're getting paid for.
Thank you, Amy. Joe?
Yes, Measure if Measure M passes, my feeling about that is it is $1.5 million out of the budget, and we would have to make some hard decisions about the budget. However, my feeling is if it passes, it's important to talk to the people that wanted that measure to pass, because you need to work in partnership with people. And even if we if we have the short-term rental, then we still need to talk to the other side. I think that's important. That's what I've experienced with pensions. And notice my time is up. Pensions is a difficult issue. I've been on both teacher and administrator on pensions. That's a negotiated item. And you have to go into negotiations on pensions before you do anything.
Thank you, Joe. Question 3, we'll start with Andrew. Trees are disappearing in Pacific Grove without being replaced. Are you familiar with the tree ordinance? How can the requirements for replanting be enforced?
I am not totally an expert on the tree ordinance. It's my understanding that if a tree is taken down, that it has to be replaced by 2 trees. And if elected, I will go back and review that to make sure that I'm correct. There are some trees that need to be removed at this time, and by that I mean not to remove a tree, but to remove unhealthy trees. We need to have a vibrant tree canopy, and we don't want all old trees. We need to make sure that we have a collection of trees so that we have new growth coming along as the other mature trees are dying. A lot of trees have been stressed in the last 5 years to 10 years because of the droughts, and they need to be, we need to have new ones coming along so that we can have new trees replacing the old trees. Thank you.
Steve?
I have 6 heritage oaks in my yard, so I'm very touchy about trees. I don't understand why they aren't being replaced when they're supposed to be. We have an arborist on the staff, and I think he needs to be instructed to go out and enforce the law if that is the case. So that pretty much sums up what I have to say about that.
The urban forestry standards was implemented in 2012, and there hasn't really been many changes to it. And going through it, you know, it's an excellent plan, but it's not being enforced. I think that actually enforcement goes back to several issues that we have in Pacific Grove. The 2018-19 budget, you know, the City Council approved an additional $70,000 in arborist contract services. So sort of, you know, what Amy is saying, we need to be justifying these contract prices and the same with the salaries.
Thank you, Tama.
So, to enforce something like planting trees after they're removed, we permit the removal, and you need a closed loop process to go back and make sure that the planting takes place. I mean, there's no complicated, it's not complicated, it needs to be done in that straightforward way. So, I think that figuring out how to get that loop closed would solve this particular problem.
I can only speak to personal experience. When we built our home, we had, unfortunately, we had to tear down some trees that were diseased and dangerous, and we learned very quickly the rules and that we needed to follow them and replant. And we did. I can say that if we weren't the type of people who are rule followers, we may have gotten away with not replanting exactly the way we're supposed to. But we did send pictures, and we turned in all the evidence to show that we did replant. So closing the loop and making sure that even the folks that aren't as rule following will do that will be important. And I do think that if the trees are diseased or causing issues, replacing them is great. We replaced a cypress with one that was the size of my 2-year-old daughter, and it's now 3 times my size, so it's growing back beautifully.
Joe?
I cannot tell you about the tree ordinance verbatim, but I would say this. I'm very familiar with other cities that have Adopt a Tree program, and those Adopt a Tree programs could help replant some of those trees depending upon the neighborhood it's going to be in. I think also to have one of the organizations I was involved with was Students Engaged in Public Service, is having the high school students assist us with adopting a tree program, getting trees replanted. I'm very familiar with that in other fields I've been in also. So that's what I would do to try to get the tree, the growth going again.
Dan?
When I was previously on the council, we spent, I think it was $100,000 for a tree plan. And I said at the time, I hope this is the last time we're gonna have to educate people to trees, have a tree person come in or anything else. And then last year I was out here with, my daughter went to preschool over here, and I was out there with 13 other parents, and 3 of them had had problems with the city arborist in the previous 2 months. So there's something that's some disconnect out there, but by and large, there's 5 kinds of, I believe it's 5 kinds of trees, and if you take them out, you're supposed to plant them 2 for 1. The enforcement has basically been absolutely zero. And I think it's time that we enforce all our laws, not just our tree laws, but also when you think of this question, think of those property rights in STRS and see how your view might start changing a little bit as to what property rights are and if you want your neighbor to have trees or cut them all down at their discretion.
Thank you. For the next question, we'll start with Steve. Do you support Measure M, that's the short-term rental limitation, and Measure J, which is the study for public water in Monterey Water Management District?
With regard to M, I'm going to vote against M. And the reason why is I've talked to both sides of the issue, and this is more than just a zoning issue. It's taxation, it's the city budget, it's motels, it's competition, it's price, it's revision of the general plan, it's property rights, it's housing, a lot of different things. And the reality is that the single subject initiative process is just not equipped to handle that many different things. And so I would believe that we should handle that through our representatives as elected to the city council. With regard to J, I'd also vote no on J. Certainly a feasibility study would be in order, but in addition to that, the proposition gives the water board the ability to determine what feasible is and then to go ahead. So it's more than just a feasibility study.
Thank you. Jenny?
Measure J, I am voting yes. I think a feasibility study and evaluation is fair, and I also commend when citizens come together for a ballot measure. With regards to M, I support it. I think by limiting the short-term rentals to the commercial and coastal zones, it will be easier for staff to enforce. It will make it simple to pinpoint the illegal businesses in our neighborhoods. And also, if you purchase a home in Del Monte Park, you will have peace of mind knowing that you're not going to have some short-term rentals show up on your block. So.
Tama?
I believe in the benefits of limiting short-term rentals, increasing our inventory of long-term rentals, getting closer to our zoning ordinances, and solving quality of life issues for a lot of people. At the same time, I don't think that Measure M is the best or even the only way to do that. So I would love to be part of a city council that had the opportunity to work on that problem, as Steve mentioned, in a more sophisticated way, more consistent with the future financial health of the city. And yes on J.
Amy?
I agree in limiting short-term rentals, and right now I think we are on a course to do that. We have 256 licenses. We should have 205 by 2020 due to just due to density rules, and I think we should continue in that direction to limit the short-term rentals. But we need to do so responsibly and make sure that the that we have the other revenue-generating ideas in place. I think short-term rentals are a unique offer that our city gives right now, that our neighboring sister cities, Pebble Beach, Monterey, and Carmel, have banned, and they do not offer. So if we can come up with another unique offering to make sure that people come and stay in our town and spend money in our town, then I want to be on city council to be able to help come up with those types of ideas. And also, I think the voters are going to tell us what they feel about Measure M, and I'd love to be a part of implementing a complex plan to make sure. And yes on J.
Joe?
Yes, yes on J. Short-term rentals, of course, voters are going to decide. And I will support, as a city council person, whatever the voters decide. However, I am in favor of the short-term rentals because of the devastation on our budget. When 47% of our budget is employees, that makes a very difficult decision as a city council person when you have to deal with employees. The 7.40 of the city ordinance provides us with problems with short-term rentals, up to 250, and that should be enforced more than what it is. Also, I would also reach out to those that on the other side of the short-term rentals and make sure I hear their voices to see what we can come up as partnership shoulder to shoulder on that.
You, Dan?
Yeah, support M. I think the people got tired of a council that couldn't come to a decision that was acceptable to everybody, and they kept trying to divide the baby, and it wasn't working. The actual origination of the STRs was that they were supposed to be a few weeks a year, not full-time, a few weeks a year during high-impact events like a US Open at the golf course, like a race out at Laguna Seca, things like that. Now you can't even do that. If somebody in here next year for the US Open wants to rent out their house for $10,000 and you don't have an STR, you can't do it. By the way, Carmel does have STRs. They're in the commercial zone. In Pacific Grove, they're everywhere. And M would limit it to the coastal zone. It's not banning. Remember, every time that the side that wants you to vote against this says it's a ban and we're going to lose all that money, not true.
Did you want to answer Jay?
Oh, Jay, yeah, I support it. It's a feasibility study, and I think it needs to be done.
Andrew?
Okay, STR is on the ballot for the citizens to decide in November. After that, there should be strong and responsible management of the STRs. I understand and have great empathy for the concerns of many residents. I want to retain our good home neighborhood values, but I'm also concerned about the loss of revenue. The loss of revenue could require the city to reduce, depending on which numbers you use, and there's many numbers, sets of numbers flowing around. It could require us to reduce the library hours, or it could reduce the number of police. Right now, with the lottery, when the lottery effect goes into effect, we're going to go from 250 to 204 units. If we Measure M passes, we'll be down to 72 units. And the projection is that of those 72, there'll be some people who won't renew the license, will be down to 50. So we'll be down to a fifth of what we have today. On Measure J, I was for Measure J until I went to the meeting last night. And, okay, am I done? Okay, thank you.
Okay, next question. We will start with Jenny. What is your position on Measure U, the $1.3 million TOT increase that will raise $1.3 million? Repetitive question. What's your position on Measure U, TOT?
Sure. So I do not support it. I think it's a Band-Aid to an ongoing problem, which is we need new, innovative revenues. Our hotels and commercial lodging, they're already competing with short-term rentals. Their rooms and occupancy is down, and we need to support them as a city and as a community. So, you know, it's very expensive to have commercial lodging and adhere with all the compliance, to make payroll and pay payroll taxes. So I think the last thing we need to do is give our commercial hoteliers an additional challenge.
Tama?
I support the measure. We need the revenue source, and I believe that we can remain competitive in our beautiful location and our our motel and hospitality industry with the increase in the tax.
Yeah, I also support the tax increase for transient occupancy tax. I think that people who want to come here will pay the increase and they'll still come to our town. I've also done a fair amount of studying of other coastal towns with a population of about 15,000 or give or take a little bit. And it's a very competitive number. A fair amount of the towns are at 14%, and so they're even higher. So hiking up a little bit at this time seems like it would be current to stay with what others are doing.
Joe?
I support the tax on the measure because it does, as Amy mentioned, it does provide for transient people coming in, staying at motels and stuff. It hasn't been raised since 1987, so it's going up from 1% to 2%, and that's very competitive compared to what some of the other cities here have for Pacific Grove, and it is going to be a revenue source for our budget at the city of Pacific Grove.
Dan?
The tax is actually going from 10 to 12%, and then will be the highest taxing for Todd Tax City in the county. You know, it's sometimes you got to live within your means, and you're already taxing people that come here and stay 10% of what they're paying, and it actually has gone up in the past 20 or 30 years. It's gone up because the cost of rooms has gone up. You know, you've got rooms that used to be $150 that are now $400, and then when you have a race or a golf tournament or something, they go even higher than that. So to think that hotels and the people that stay in them aren't paying their fair share, I think is kind of a misnomer. Now, if we had more parking meters and people that come down and use our shoreline and the beaches paid a little more to use the things that we have to pay a lot of money to take care of, that might be a better thing to be doing.
Steve? I'm sorry, Andrew.
I agree that we should pass the increase in the TOT. It's going from, as was mentioned, it's going from 10 to 12%. That's about $2 per 100. So if someone comes down here and spends $1,000 on a hotel for 3 or 4 nights or 5 nights, it's only an additional $20 increase. In addition, in Monterey, the hotels near the conference center have been assessed at 14.5%. So we're not going to be above what our competition is in this part of the town. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
I support the tax. 2 years ago, I think it was, we turned down the aquarium tax, and at the time, apparently we had a survey that was done that showed that the population here supported a TOT tax increase by 70 to 30%. So I think that the odds of this passing might be very good. One of the realities is this is a pass-through tax. Out-of-town people pay it. Some in the industry have been purported to say that, well, it's coming out of the pockets of the hotels. Well, it's not. It's coming out of the pockets of those people who visit us. So I believe we should pass this to enhance our budget. We need the funds, and as I said, we should have passed this 2 years ago.
Okay. So, question number 6. We'll start with Tama. If an application for a cannabis dispensary came up at a council meeting, how would you vote?
So I actually am open to the idea of a cannabis dispensary, not on Lighthouse Avenue in another commercial district. I think as liquor, being able to purchase liquor in Pacific Grove at one point, it became mainstream in other places. It might become mainstream here. I don't know that I want to be out in the meat on it. There are still problems with those businesses. They can't do banking, so they're all cash businesses still. But it is one of the options that I think we should consider as a revenue source at the right time for Pacific Grove.
Thank you. Amy?
I would want to get the pulse on the city and see, you know, how many people are going to use such a facility, would like a facility, and I'd like to to know that and do my homework, as I would try to approach anything if I was on city council, to do the homework necessary to know the pros and cons and what we could get. It seems great, it's a lot of money, and rather than make a snap decision to jump in and approve something, you need to do your homework and make sure that you know what the repercussions could be. But I would be open to it, absolutely.
Thank you, Joe.
Let's not forget, I was in law enforcement for. So, besides that, okay, I believe that the cannabis dispensary would bring some revenue to the city, but I would want to look as a city council person at all the data on cannabis. I'm very familiar with what happened in city of San Jose, because it's some of the areas I worked in, and they went through a lot of fact-finding about cannabis clubs. I would not want a cannabis club near a high school. I would say it should be somewhere in the commercial area. If there is going to be cannabis club, it has to be the data. We have to look at the data to make sure we're going to make the right decision for the revenue source.
Thank you, Dan.
Well, 2 years ago when I was running for mayor and that question was asked, I said the same thing that I'll say now, which is if we're at the caboose of this train, I wouldn't mind. It shoots the heck out of the DARE program. I got kids coming up, and personally, as a council person, I think I'd be setting a very bad example saying, yeah, let's sell it in town. It's amazing, when I was in high school, back in it was easier to get marijuana than it was cigarettes, because you had to be 18 to buy cigarettes. So it worries me, the whole marijuana thing and how easy it is to get and stuff. It worries me, and I've managed to go my whole life without smoking it. And that's working in music and films and all sorts of strange businesses that where it's very prevalent. So I think we can get by without having it sold in Pacific Grove.
Andrew?
I believe that there's quite a few people in town, at least I've talked to several people, and who would need it for medical reasons. I would not put it on Lighthouse. I would not put it downtown near a school. But looking at it from a revenue source that's properly managed and properly sourced, looking at Delray Oaks, is what I've read in the paper, they got an additional over $700,000 so far this year since they've started. And that would go a long way towards trying to repair our streets and our curbs and replacing sidewalks that have been damaged by old age and that just need to be built entirely. Thank you.
Steve?
I don't know how many times I would say no to this, and no and no. I don't believe we should do this. And my perspective is one maybe from the healthcare industry. The state of Colorado legalized marijuana a couple of years ago or so. And I've often said to people, if you want to really understand the impact of this, go talk to a neonatal doctor or nurse in the Denver Children's Hospital and ask them about all the drug babies coming in because of this. And once you've seen that, I think you might have a different view than you might right now, or at least that's how I feel. So I think this is something that the money looks good, but it's just not worth it.
Jenny?
So I personally would not initiate this, but if it was supported by council and the residents, I would be open to a very stringent and regulated program. I do like Delray Oaks program with the substation at the location of the dispensary. I think the location would need to be very mindful away from schools, also well lit with accessible parking. Whoever is going to be the opener or the proprietor of the cannabis dispensary, I would want to make sure they're not affiliated with the city or anybody's friend. And I would also like to see the entire process to be completely transparent.
Thank you. The next question, Amy will start. How do you want the city to be different at the end of your term?
I would like to see the city be able to have the businesses that I see vacant. I would like to see new businesses come in there and maybe in a creative way and be able to reach out and try and maybe do some pop-up events or pop-up stores. Let them have 6 months rent-free possibly and see if they can be viable in our town. And try and remove some of the red tape that it may take to start a business downtown. So I'd like to see some more business opportunities as well as taking care of our community and infrastructure, roads. I think the traffic circle is a wonderful idea that the towns came together for. Other innovative ideas like that to deal with our traffic problem and to update our parks. I'd like to develop a recreation plan so that I don't have to, go do all the sports and activities that I take my kids to do in other neighboring cities. I want to do them here in Pacific Grove and let our city benefit from that money that I pay for those activities.
Thank you. Joe?
Yes, I'm on the Parks and Recreation Commission for the City of Pacific Grove. I'm Vice Chairperson, and I feel that we do need to emphasize our parks, and I would, at the end of my term, I would want our parks to be up to the best parks on the Monterey Peninsula. I think Pacific Grove should be known as that. I also believe in having this budget financially solid for the city of Pacific Grove and its residents, so that you can sit back and we don't have to worry about voting about short-term rentals. We're going to be financially solvent. At the end of my term, I also would want to see downtown vibrant. I was a former business owner, I've told you that before, and my feeling is we need to continue to focus on downtown and make it vibrant.
Dan?
Yeah, in 5 years, I'd like us to be able to no longer have income-producing things on the ballot, because we've managed to live within our means, balanced our budget more so than it is now, actually pay our bills as we go along. We currently owe almost $40 million to CalPERS. So when you say that's like saying your home budget's balanced, but you owe $30,000 on credit cards. So the day's coming to pay the piper, and sooner or later the state's going to ask for that money, and we're going to be in a lot of trouble. To get ourselves out of CalPERS, that would only be about $140 million. So there are definite structural things within our city in the way that it's run and the way the government allows things to go on that need to be changed, not just on our level, but within the state. We've got some real problems, and sooner or later it's going to be like dominoes, and it's not going to be pretty.
Andrew?
I would like to see a balanced and solvent budget, and to get there I would attempt to get new businesses into town, reduce the permits, the cost of permits for new business to start, charge them full permits, a full cost of the permits once they get going and they're better able to pay the cost of the permits. We need to improve our infrastructure, our sidewalks and our streets. Some of the streets haven't been paved in 40 and 50 years. We put down a pavement over it, but we don't really pave the streets. Our parks need to be improved. Looking at Washington Park, there's a couple benches there, and there's nails coming out of the bench. I'd like to make the parks usable for everybody, as well as protecting our environment and our butterflies in the parks.
Steve?
Well, the first thing I would say is maybe after 40 years we might get some water. It's 40 years ago that we put the water board in by ballot, and not to blame the water board, but we still seem to be having troubles getting a supply of water. I think there's a lot of issues that are on the table that we need to address as a council and as a city. Certainly we've approved a hotel and a commercial development across from the theater. If there's water, those can go ahead and be developed, and that would add to the tax base of the city. We need a downtown plan. We haven't talked at all this evening about housing. We have a housing plan. It would be nice to implement that plan if we had water, and there's things we can probably do despite having no water from that plan. And above all, we need to have a balanced budget. If we leave that to the next council, we will have done a good job.
Thank you. Jenny?
At the end of my term, I would like to see a thriving downtown. I would love for Pacific Grove to be known as a more inclusive city, a diverse and welcoming city. I would also like to be known as being part of a great working collaborative council that did many good things for Pacific Grove. And that's it.
I would like to see, at the end of a term, the city be on a solid financial footing. I'd like to see business helped by increasing our long-term rental inventory, perhaps by allowing the development of ancillary units on properties to increase both lower cost rentals and the number of rentals. So if we have more residents, more regular residents here, we would have a better opportunity for our businesses. I'd like to see the local coastal program in place and being enforced so that we are protecting the coast. I'd like to see us take a longer view of how climate change is going to impact us. So if we had a more solid plan going beyond what the LCP currently looks at for sea level rise affecting the town at the end of the day, I would like that for Pacific Grove.
Thank you. This will be the last question, and we'll start with Joe. What specific proposals would you put forth to make rental properties more affordable for long-term residents who rent?
It's always a difficult question about that. And it's been my experience to be sure to listen to the public that have rentals and hear what they feel about rent control. There have been some cities I'm familiar with in Santa Clara County that have gone into rent control, and it's been a fight to the finish. It shouldn't be that way. So my feeling is that there has to be some rent control. Walking the streets, knocking on doors. I met a family, I'll give you an example, lived in a 3-bedroom home with 1 bathroom and 3 kids, and they were paying $3,200 a month for that, and that's criminal.
I think the way that's worded is almost rent controls the only thing you can do outside of supply and demand, which is either make the city so that less people want to come here, which slowly but surely I think we've done that over the years, or you increase the amount of housing. I think the space behind the movie theater has been underutilized for years. I think we should have workforce housing in between the parking that's there now, because we can't sacrifice any parking downtown. And the sad fact of it is, everybody who wants to live in Pacific Grove can't live in Pacific Grove. And it's going to be at a cost before too long, which is you start seeing now in stores, almost every store and restaurant now has a help wanted sign, and that's because people have been priced out. So I think it's a regional and federal problem as much as it is a Pacific Grove problem.
Thank you, Andrew.
I agree it's a regional problem. One of the things we need to do is to get more water and to improve the desal plant. And if the city had more water, possibly we can get more granny units. We could also put some housing on the corner across from the police station. We could also reduce the cost of permits. When we do the cost recovery, the cost of permits is so high that the cost of housing then becomes higher, because when a builder builds out the house, he has to pencil in to get his cost back from that type of housing. We also could put units over the businesses where we have workforce housing on top of some of the businesses downtown. And then lastly, it would have to be also work with the regional efforts with the other cities on the peninsula.
Thank you. Steve?
I would, as a last resort, get involved with rent control, but I think there's some things we can do to increase the supply of housing even if we don't have any water. For example, we should refuse to rezone any residence to commercial-only use. That has gone on in the past in a couple of neighborhoods, and that really needs to stop if it were to continue. We need to streamline permits and reduce fees for workforce housing. We need to consider annexing the Mission Laundry lot. It's now a county island in the middle of Pacific Grove, and then sit down with the owner of that property, the county housing authority, and other parties to see if we can develop workforce housing. We need to look at density bonuses and accessory units. And finally, I think in our housing plan, we have a thing called the Housing Trust Fund, and we need to look at ways to fund that to see if that can help us out of this issue.
Steve, Jenny.
So we have a fairly underutilized housing program that I think with some changes implemented could really benefit renters. I would love to see a renter's assistance program. I think our economic development department could come up with a nice package that would support residents who are interested in building ADUs. And also Pacific Grove can step up its leadership with regards to collaborating with our other cities, Marina, Salinas. You know, we can't keep moving these people to other cities and crossing our fingers that they don't want to come and park, you know, behind Hayward Lumber or on Asilomar or camp in our forest. So it's time that all of the cities come together. I understand Pacific Grove doesn't necessarily have the funds to help fund a warming shelter, but we definitely have the brains and lots of talent that could assist with a solution.
Thank you. Tama?
So the combination of getting water, allowing more granny units, because I think there's some real potential for us in our town to keep our character and create a larger amount of long-term rental property in that way. And some of the developments that have been suggested, I think those are the things that we need to consider.
Thank you. Amy?
I think that affordable housing is a great option to be able to provide for the people of our town who need it. You may have a really long line of people who need affordable housing, and so my first action would be to try and get jobs for those people so that they can actually pay the rent prices, because they are going up all over California. And I talked earlier tonight about those jobs, and I think we can create them up in Marina, in the Fort Ord area, and make that an industrial college town that will have jobs that can support the people that live in Pacific Grove and be able to pay for it. If we do that, we'll have a more vibrant city and we'll make money. And then if we have the money, we can apply it towards an affordable housing program to give the people who work here and need that affordable housing. And I think when new people come in and want to develop in our town, we should mandate that 10% of a new building be affordable housing, those types of things in our negotiations with them.
Thank you. We will now have closing statements, and we will go in reverse order from our original. So Amy will start, and we'll go down the line. Closing statements.
Okay, thank you very much for being here tonight and listening to all of us. I very much have enjoyed it, and I would like you to remember you know, that while I am sort of new and I am running for the city council here, it's not my first thing I've run for. I applied to be a Blue Angel. It's a very coveted position, and I was selected. I was the first female selected to the Blue Angels team, and the Navy had me represent, you know, 540,000 sailors and Marines across this country and be able to be their voice and go into different cities and do that job. I worked with 16 different officers. We had to work together. We had to get along. And it was a true honor to do that. I think if I were elected and I got to work with the 7 voting members of your town on city council, I would provide the same teamwork approach and effort to do a very good job to represent you and to make good decisions.
Thank you. Tama?
I'd like to thank the Chamber of Commerce and the League of Women Voters for holding this event, but moreover, I'd like to thank all of you for being here, because you are engaging with the process and it really makes a difference. I hope you will think about what you've heard here tonight. I hope you will talk about what you've heard here tonight, and I hope you will all vote on Election Day in November. I would be very thrilled to represent you, to listen and to look at the, as I said, all sides of the issues and represent you on your city council in this beautiful gem of a city that we live in.
Thank you. Jenny?
Thank you all for being here. I am definitely feeling inspired by all of the wonderful statements and ideas that the candidates have said, and I hope that we hold everyone accountable to them. And thanks for participating. I think it's so crucial that the public participates, and especially thank you for voting.
Thank you. Steve?
Well, it's been a privilege for me to be here this evening, and I want to thank you for giving your time to come here this evening to hear us all out. The question about this election is a very simple one, and it is this: what kind of city are we going to leave to our children and grandchildren? As I look back over the last 40-some years, I would say that we can continue to stay as America's last hometown, but we need to fix a few things. And I think that became clear this evening. We certainly need to hold the line on the budget, no doubt about that. But we also need to take a hard look at our business community and work with them to develop a better business development policy so that we have a job base and taxes to pay for the budget items that we require. We also need a coastal plan that protects the coast, but is also protective of the rights of the businesses and the homeowners there. And we need to fix several ordinances like the cell phone tower. So with that, thank you.
Andrew?
I want to thank the League of Women Voters and Chamber of Commerce for holding this meeting. I want to thank you all for coming and listening to us. You have 7 seemingly qualified candidates in front of you, well, eminently qualified candidates in front of you. We have a large group of people who are interested in Pacific Grove. We all care about Pacific Grove. I hope I have answered your questions adequately. If I have not, then please contact me. You have my cell phone number, you have my email address. I am interested in the budget. I'm interested in our coastline. I want to balance the budget, maintain our coastline, and keep the Pacific Grove a strong and vibrant town. We need to, several people who I've talked to as I've gone door to door, they said that they would like a little bit more activity downtown in the evening. Some of the people want a little bit more lights. Some of the other people want us to maintain our town. I think we can manage the town properly with the new council members coming on and drive Pacific Grove into a vibrant town. Thank you very much.
Dan?
I've lived here 63 years now. I'm 3rd generation. I've produced a 4th generation. And I think the historical knowledge of the town is very important in bringing it to the council. It's not to say I'm infallible or that I'm all-knowing and all-seeing. Just today I've made 3 mistakes. And one day I trimmed my beard when I'd already put on this shirt. I hadn't figured out that I've gained 30 pounds since I last wore my suits, so they don't fit now. And during that earthquake earlier, I didn't hold on to my water cup correctly, and it was cleaning up the rest of the evening. So I think experience matters, and that's why I'm here, is because we're losing a lot of knowledge and experience on the council. And I think we can't just go in with 3 people who aren't experienced.
Thank you. Joe?
My closing statement is this. I have had a wealth of experience, both, as I explained earlier, as a police officer, former police officer, business owner, and superintendent of schools. I also feel my history of public service, everywhere from the San Jose, from the Pacific Grove Recreation Department. Also, as a commissioner, I've been on many boards before in regards to the Santa Clara County Florence Commission. I've made cultural awareness of that, but I would provide a fresh voice to the City Council with common sense. I'm a listener, and I'm a listener. And I think it's very important to listen to the public as a city council person if I'm elected, and that I think I can make my voice heard, hear your voices to make the right decision as a city council person.
Thank you. Let's give them a round of applause.
the city and the chamber. Let's give the league a big hand. Thank you, league. Appreciate it. Thank you very much. Have a nice evening, everyone. And let's vote on November 6th. Let's vote. Thank you.